Okay, hello. So this is a video which is going to accompany a series of videos that I've just put out on my Instagram, which I entitled Fixing Your Holiday Back Pain or Sorting Out Your Holiday Back Pain. And what I really meant by that is that these are a group of exercises which are targeting getting rid of those little niggles which can be just sort of like here in your lower back. And after a holiday, I mean, because probably after a period of inactivity. And now that might be an extended period of inactivity, like a month or so, or maybe even like up to a year. But it could also be like, through a day, sitting down a lot through the day. So these exercises are going to be really useful for you as a tool to combat that pain when it sort of flares up, no matter the situation. And you can use them sort of like as part of a routine to develop yourself over time, or you can use them as a one-off in a situation. These exercises were put together by a YouTuber called Jeremy Ethier, so I'll put a link to his video or his channel in the description of this video. My aim is to make sure that you understand fully how to do the exercises and that you can really get the most out of them. Okay, so we'll get going. Okay, I'm going to talk a lot in this video about posterior and anterior tilt in your pelvis. That means that your hips can be coming up this way, or they can be going back that way. Now, these little niggles that happen in the back quite often are associated with your pelvis having sort of got a bit stuck in this anterior position, and then it kind of like all the pressure goes down through here, and this will be like while you're walking around, it just sort of like gets stuck in there, and the muscles which are really supposed to be supporting your spine are switched off and not doing their job properly. So this circuit is to wake all of those muscles up, make them strong, so that in your normal standing posture, everything is doing its correct job and that pain can start to dissipate. But first, let's understand, if you imagine your pelvis to be like a box, like this, it could move forwards and backwards in space, like that, or it can tilt in space, yeah? If you had it here and you rotated it. So a posterior tilt is when it tilts up this way, like your hip bones are driving up your body, and it makes that part of your back here, it makes that lower part of your back longer, okay? And the anterior tilt is in the opposite direction. So understanding those two things are really important. So have a little bit of a play with making sure that you can do that inside your own body. What I quite often recommend to people is if you stand your feet like this, a little bit wider apart, and just bend your knees so that it frees up your hips a little bit, then it's much easier to feel that movement of posterior and anterior. The other thing with your pelvis is it's actually a really large bone inside of your body. So if you can get your fingers on your hips here, and then use your thumbs to work up and actually find the top of your pelvis, here, the sort of like the wing of it, and you'll find in your body, it's huge. It's really taking up a lot of space. Like mine is up here and like right down to there. And so when you do your rotating, think that the whole of that bone is rotating, and then you'll get a much more pronounced movement, and you'll start to feel it already kind of moving, because when you bring it this way, your quads get extended, the hip flexors get extended, and these are often muscles which are tight and seized up. When you pull it in the other direction, then the hamstrings get pulled and the glutes get stretched, and it all actually starts to work very much the way that it's supposed to. So before we move on to the rest of the exercises, familiarise yourself with that tilting of the pelvis, because it's going to be really important. Okay, so the first exercise is going to be for the quads and the hip flexors. We're going to use a divided kneeling. Divided kneeling looks like this. I've got my leg coming directly up and in line with my shoulder. My shin is also in line with the knee, so it's not skewed off over here or over there too much, nicely in line, and this other leg also is coming here, and my hips are facing forwards. Now, we're going to use that posterior tilt that I was just talking about. So, take your hips back slightly off the line of the knee, and then using the posterior tilt, that's going to bring me back on top and in line, okay? And I can already feel a stretch through the front of my quad and my hip flexor. The next move is to engage your glute muscle through the sides and the top and the back. That's going to increase that stretch, okay? Then I want you to draw in your abdomen. Make this front plane of your body really, really long, and already you're going to be getting more of a stretch sensation. Now we're going to bring in a bit of a breathing pattern. So you're going to breathe in deep, and as you breathe out, draw in your stomach and lengthen. Engage even more into your glute. Breathe out, lengthen, engage, get taller the whole time. It's going to be building this stretch. You also then have all these muscles along the inside of your leg, although I want you to focus on this leg. I'm just pointing here so you can see, but I'm meaning this leg here. And I want you to use those to pull up into the inside of the hip capsule, sort of the hip joint. Use everything that you've got to stabilize that position, okay? Continue with your breathing, and the more you breathe around, the more you're going to become aware of what's going on in there. You'll be able to engage these things. So we've got that in breath, out, tummy in, hips engaged, glutes engaged, lengthen, lengthen, lengthen. Then the last thing you can do is, if you imagine that the femur, which is the bone which is running up the thigh, is coming up like this and it's in the hip socket. I want you to imagine like sucking the hip socket up and off the bone, so you're getting real length. It's called floating your hip. It's a thing that ballet dancers do. Okay, so posterior tilt, engage the hip, doing my breathing, and then I'm pulling it up. I'm imagining driving up and out of the socket, engage even more in under there, and I'm just building that. And I'm building it each time I breathe out. I breathe out, more engagement, more activation, more stretch, okay? And you're going to go for about 5 breaths on each leg, and that will be that. That will be that stretch done. Okay, so we were just looking at the quad and the hip flexors. We're now going to move on to the hamstring, up into the glute muscles on the outside and the back of your leg. For that, we're going to do a pigeon stretch on a box. Pigeon stretch is like in yoga flow, you may have seen. It's quite familiar looking. It sort of looks like this, okay? But we're going to do it up on the box. So I want your shin to be level across the box like this. Like as you look down, it should be a straight line, okay? So you're going to lie your shin across there like that. I'm going to give you a couple of different ways to do this, okay? Ideally, what we're looking for is, once I've got this in place, I'm going to work my back leg back, and then the stretch actually comes from sending my sternum forwards and lengthening my back leg like this, okay? And each time I breathe out, because we can use a breathing pattern again, breathe in and out. I'm just getting longer through that back leg and taller up through my torso, okay? Now, that can be enough for some people, but this might be too much to begin with, so I'm going to give you an alternative. It may be that you need 1 or 2 blocks underneath your knee to make it possible for you to have that shin in that straight line that we want as we're looking down on it. It also might be very difficult in the first instance to actually get that back leg straight. So what you can do is definitely get the stretch into this part of your leg, is come into a position a bit more like this where the leg is bent, and gently just lower yourself up and down, and then you could try working the length of the leg back through there, and couple it in with your breathing as well. So you'd be going in and out, a little bit deeper, and out. And then if you were getting to the point where you're straightening your leg, you're going in and out through there, okay? And out. So again, about 5 breaths on each side, and that'll be that. One more thing for that stretch is the orientation of your hips. Now this is actually something in gymnastics which comes from doing the splits, which is that if we imagine that I had this leg up here, like I'm on the box, this back hip, so the one which is over here, wants to be coming round this way, okay? Which is squaring your hips. We don't want to be skewed off in this direction, all right? This needs to be pulling around this way, and this one needs to be coming in. You don't need to go like over, but it's like it needs to be on a journey this way. It needs to be constantly sort of twisting and getting taller up through there like that. So when I'm here, I'm really thinking about lining up my hips, and that brings me nice and tall, drawn in, and I get in my position. I'm working nice and deep into my stretch. Okay, this is our final stretching exercise. There are 4 exercises in this circuit. The first 3 are stretches, getting blood flow into this area and just waking up the muscles. The 4th is actual strength training, but this is the 3rd, which is another stretch. So from the front on, it looks like this. What I'm going to do is show it to you first and then explain. So the exercise looks like this. But there are quite a few particularities that we can use to really get a lot out of this position. So first things first, my knees are slightly set wider than my shoulders, and then I'm just sitting back a little bit, okay? A little bit of an anterior tilt, which if you remember is that going backwards in the pelvis, okay? So slightly back behind there. After that, I'm going to put my hand fully on the back of my skull, like this. Not like this, not just off over here. Grab the back of your skull. Okay, so you've got that. This elbow comes down under here, and then it's a big line with the elbow, like it's getting pulled out, really, really stretched to the top, right as tall as you possibly can, and then all the way back down again. That's the movement. With my legs, whilst I'm doing that, I'm bracing out into the floor so that I'm engaged into my hips. What that does is, rather than being just a shoulder stretch, it takes it all the way across my torso and down into my groin. So that I get this, I'm braced out through my legs, pulling up through here, and I can have a stretch that comes all the way up across that entire line of my body, reaching that point of my shoulder ever taller. Now, the breathing pattern for this exercise is a little bit tricky to get a hang of, but it basically just requires being a bit patient. So what you're going to do, get down to the bottom, deep breath in here, breathe out to move, pause at the top, then you breathe in again and out to move, pause at the bottom, breathe in and out, pause at the top, breathe in and out. Okay, so you could describe it as you breathe in the still positions, either at the bottom or the top, and you always are breathing out to do a movement. Okay, the last thing I'd like to say, with that breath, it's not just a sort of tokenistic thing, it's not just, I want you to take a lot of air into your lungs and expand yourself, because you've taken yourself into that kind of contorted position with the elbow underneath. And if you take a deep breath in there, it's going to enhance and increase all the stretches you're already feeling in that position. And you're going to get so much more out of just literally being there. And also have this sense of expansiveness, expanding through your hips, strong into the floor, reaching through that shoulder. You're always trying to get more, reach further. And that's where you're going to really get the most out of this exercise. Okay, and for that one, we're going for 5 rotations on one side and 5 rotations on the other side, and then you'll be done. Okay, final exercise in this circuit, and this is the one where you're really going to start to build some strength and get activation into the muscles which you really want to be using to stabilize your spine and create that nice, normal, standard posture, and also start to diminish those lower back pains that we want to get rid of. Now, we're doing glute bridges, but I'll call these posterior tilt glute bridges, okay? So, we're not just thrusting up into the air. We're using a tilt of the pelvis, which is exactly everything that I explained at the beginning. So if I go for an anterior tilt, look, then a space appears underneath my back. If I use a posterior tilt, posterior tilt, posterior tilt, posterior tilt like this, eventually my hips start to rise up off the ground. And if I keep doing that tilt, they're going to go higher, 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 higher. Now what we want to add into this is for our rib cage to press back in the opposite direction, like it's plunging back down towards the floor as the hips are rising up, and that creates this kind of like lockout position where it gets stuck, but you get this very incredibly straight line from your knee through to your shoulder. What happens when you do this clamping in of the rib cage and rotating the pelvis up is you get a massive fire up in your glutes and your hamstrings, and that's what we're really after. On the way down, roll the spine down, almost back to the anterior tilt, and then posterior tilt, back up again, roll down, posterior tilt up. And then you can start to bring in a little bit of what I call acceleration. So it's not going really quickly up, but it's like up and powerfully into the position. Roll down. Accelerate up into the position. And even when you're at the top, imagine that you're pressing taller, ever taller, always trying to get more in. It's never held or fixed. It's always something which is growing and developing. That's where you really get that muscular activation and you're challenging your body to go somewhere that it hasn't been before. You're going to go for 10 reps. And go, start slowly to begin with to get the idea of it. Once you've done your 10 reps, you're holding in position for 15 seconds. But everything I just said, it's not just hold and squeeze. I'm trying to get taller the whole time. I'm trying to consolidate my position. I'm using my breathing pattern. I breathe out. Develop the shape, develop the shape. After 15 seconds, roll into your second set. Up again, another 10 reps. And on that one, you're going to go for 3 rounds. 10 reps, 15-second hold, straight into the next set, 3 rounds. Okay, so that's all of the exercises. So if I recap, we had the divided kneeling, which stretches the front of the leg, the pigeon on the box, which does the back and the glutes, and then we had the rotational movement, the elbow rotation, which sort of does your lower back and the whole way across your groin through your chest into your shoulder. And then we finished up with the posterior tilt glute bridges. And those are the things which are really going to drive all of this home. The first 3 exercises are sort of priming your hips and your lower back for the glute bridges, and that's where you really get the muscle activation, which is going to start to nullify that back pain, and over time will help it to dissipate. Now this could be a fantastic little circuit for you to do before a training session. If you're a power lifter or a weightlifter or something like that, if you can come into a soft area in your gym and just work through that circuit, it's going to feel like really, really good muscle activation for you as part of your warm-up. However, if you're not training in such a serious way, but you spend a lot of time sitting down, these exercises can be really fantastic to do like at the end of the day, just after you've finished work. Again, I would recommend you go and check out Jeremy Ethia's channel, the guy who put together the series of exercises in the first place. He's got a lot of information, and if you want to learn more about them, that would be a great place to do that. As I say, my intention as a coach is to make sure that you are fully able to understand how to do the exercise in your own body. I am available for online support. I do one-to-one coaching for flexibility and mobility, also calisthenics and gymnastics, and I can do one-to-one training with you online if you would like. If you'd like more information, or if you'd like some help with just figuring out how to get one of these exercises to really work for you. But I hope that this video is helpful, and yeah, thank you very much for watching.